Morago. He is the author of two full-length collections of poetry, five chapbooks, a four-time Pushcart nominee, and the editor-in-chief of Moontide Press. Very, very excited to have him this hour to talk some poetry, to talk some publishing, to talk about kind of what is to be done, and to talk about the Southern California poetry scene at large. So, Eric, can you begin just by telling us a little bit about how you got involved in poetry and getting your work out there?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Matt. I'm happy to be here, so thank you. Yeah, so I've been, I guess, in the Southern California poetry scene slash community, probably I would say since 2006. I think that's about right. Um, uh, I kind of got my start even before I kind of dove into the local open mic community that Southern California had to offer. Um, I always would be attending. There's one open mic in particular in the Long Beach area. I went to school in Long Beach at Cal State Long Beach for some time prior 2006, and would go to this open mic called the Coffee Haven. And I just always enjoyed that kind of cathartic experience of going to an open mic. This open mic was primarily a stand-up comedy open mic, so they loved having somebody who was not competing with their craft. So they were very hospitable to a young poet, and I was a terrible poet. Wrote really bad, like just bad stuff, just bad. But it was still fun, and it was just a weekly routine. I loved going to it, and along the way I never even thought myself of pursuing this as a career, but things kind of changed when I after I took some time off and found myself back at Cal State Long Beach finishing my undergrad. I was in an intro to creative writing poetry class, and it was kind of like one of those right place, right times kind of thing. I was going through a really terrible breakup. I was rock bottom, making real bad bad choices, we'll say, and felt like shit. And the professor that I had was a grad student in this intro to creative writing poetry class, and he was good friends with Buddy Wakefield. And Buddy came into our class, performed, and just blew me away in what he was doing. And it kind of like a light just went off. And I was like, hey, I want to do that too. What he's giving to people, I want to give that as well too, as a way to heal. And it kind of got me out of my rock bottom place. And from that moment, I kind of got really interested in the performance poetry scene in slam, and kind of dove into. I remember one week I went to every single open mic I could find in Southern California. I went to the Poetry Lounge. I went to Green back when that was going on at the Palmer Room in Culver City. I went to the Ugly Mug, Two Idiots Peddling Poetry. I went to Redondo Poets. I hit every single open mic I could find just to kind of immerse myself and see what this was all about, and it stuck. I was hooked, and from there got involved in uh, some poetry slam. I was on Long Beach State's team for a number of years, coached them for a number of years, competed in the college regionals, and then kind of moved on to get my MFA to kind of learn more about the page, so to speak, and what poetry uh, can do on the page, not so much on the stage. But I always tried to keep that same performative energy that I would have on the stage into my work as it appeared in print. And from there, like you said, published a number of collections and became a publisher.
So a part of what we're doing here is that we're trying to collect a kind of oral histories about these different venues as well as
Yeah,
talk.
I think that's awesome. Yeah,
So we've actually had we had Rat Pack Slim on to talk about Green.
I saw that.
We had
Yeah, Joshua
uh,
Silverstein, who was
Josh
following
Silverstein.
too. Yeah.
We had Ben to talk about Two Idiots peddling poetry. We haven't had him from the lounge yet, or we had Donnie Jackson from the lounge. But I
Yeah,
haven't really gotten the founders yet.
and you had Paul Maybon on, who's
I had
been,
Paul Maybon, yeah,
he's not affiliated, but he's a big, long-standing.
yeah.
And
Paul
you forgot
Maybon.
And you forgot to mention, I mean, it's not like as big as any of those venues, but I host a reading series. It's called Shout the Open Mic, based off out of a bookstore. It used to be in Whittier, but now it's in Fullerton, called Half Off Books. So that's a monthly reading series, the second Thursday of every month.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about Chow, but first I want to get like just because it's one thing to get the founders of the story, whatever, but like
Sure.
as a participant, I'm very interested in asking you about some of these venues, particularly Two Idiots, because I know that you're a big, you're a regular there. I mean, I mean,
Yeah.
you're
When
somewhat
I
a
can get
regular.
there.
I mean, I'm more irregular, but when I'm there, I see you more often than not. So, can you tell us a little about Two Idiots Peddling Poetry and what it's like as a poet, as a participating poet
Yeah,
in a
no, absolutely.
venue?
I love Two Idiots Peddling Poetry. I think it's a really great space that really um is it allows poets to, I think, one, it can be very inviting to new time people. I mean, it certainly was to me. It's a strange collection of regulars, but I think every open mic is a strange collection of regulars. But what I really love about Two Idiots is that you could you cannot be in an MFA program or have any schooling in poetry and attend that reading regularly. And if you are open in terms of um, growing and evolving as an artist and listening and being reflective of your own work, I think you can get just as a powerful education by the features that the reading brings in. They bring in great features, and also how the regulars are constantly trying to improve their own craft. So I think it's a great space that it nurtures growth in a writer. Um, and if um, and if not, if that's, if you're just going there to also just have that cathartic experience, just to get up on a mic and just share your thoughts and feelings, they're supportive of that too. And I think that's important for an open mic. I think an open mic needs to walk that fine line between challenging its audience to want to grow in their craft, but also be a place that nurtures and supports people's expression and need to express what's going on in their head and their heart.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little about Green?
Green, um, Green was I. So it's
A lot
all these venues do have their own sort of lifeblood and energy. And when you compare Green to the Ugly Mug, it's like almost two completely different things, but in a good way. Green was just a party. I mean, it was. It was. I think, like I was saying, right place, right time when I got involved in the poetry. I think it was also just the right culmination of venues that I went to that also really had a large factor in shaping me to be the poet and the publisher that I am today. And Green, I was sad when Green stopped. I think it was like 2 years after I started going, something along those lines. Made some really great friendships through Green. Rob Sturma, Rat Pack Slim being one of them. And when I say it was a party, I mean it was a poetry reading at a restaurant slash bar. Food was great. The bar was open. I mean, it was an open bar. We had to pay, but I mean, I mean, for me, it was like it's poetry and drinks, and people are up there. DJ Jedi spinning. Joshua Silverstein, is dropping beats, and Rob is doing his geeky poems with that raspy voice of his. Like, I look forward to every Monday night that I can get out there, And there was an open mic and usually amazing features. So like it was a show. And I really, really appreciated that. I mean, it was a show. Every open mic, every Monday was definitely a show. And they tried to put it on as such. I mean, my favorite thing was that Jedi would really be listening to what the poets were sharing when they were up on stage, and he'd always find the perfect track to play in between in between readers, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. So it just, like I said, it was a party vibe,
Yeah.
but not like unstructured. It was structured party.
It's funny because when people try to describe green or some of the regulars of green, there was so far there's been a lot of false starts. Like green is uh, so that's a testament to what an environment, what a
Oh, I
rocket.
think yeah, it's like I think that false start is we look back on it incredibly fondly.
Yeah,
So we're just trying to find the right words to encapsulate how good of a time that was. And I came in on it towards the tail end.
yeah,
Um, and that's why I wish I had more time with it.
yeah. Can you tell us about the poetry lounge?
Poetry Lounge, I think it has a similar energy to Green. It did for me. I didn't get out to the lounge as much as I'd like. I think only because of my own sort of um, I mean, you felt like you were going to like a really big deal when you go to Green, or not Green. I'm sorry, at the Poetry Lounge. I mean, at least I did because there'd be like a long ass line to get in. Um, it was packed, and I think it was the coolest thing when I was just starting out to see like, wow, like this is what poetry can be. Like this, like so many people here for this.
Yeah,
And I loved how it encouraged, and it probably helped the fact that it was at the Greenway Court Theater, which was at Fairfax High School, but how many youth were involved and participating and going, and that was the coolest thing to see. It like really seemed like a great hub to inspire a youth into what spoken word can do, and I think that that translated into Get Lit and things like that. I mean, it's incredible. It's just it's a force.
so what was your experience like moving from the venues, moving from the open mics, moving to from just out there hustling and just like making as many a week as you can, um, a life I'm very familiar with. Can you tell our audience a little bit about your MFA program, what that was like for you? We've had a number of people come on and talk about their MFA, some good experiences, some bad experiences. How did that play out for you?
You know what? The MFA program for me was, it was a huge um shift coming from that space of the performance, those open mics and everything, and then sitting down in a very structured classroom. um, that first semester was incredibly difficult for me, and even though I love the aesthetic and the vibe at Cal State Long Beach, that felt good to me. It was just kind of shifting into that workshop setting with um, poets who were all doing very, very different things. Um, it was rough. The very first semester was very tough on me. I felt, and this could have all been in my own head too. So anybody who's watching this who I may have gone to grad school with, I don't necessarily point any fingers or judge. I admit that this could have all been psychosomatic, but there was at times I almost felt like I was the kind of like the mascot of the program. I was going out, while I was attending, grad school, I was getting features, or I was getting asked to perform for the California Workforce Association, at a conference of, for the youth, or teaching in, juvenile correctional facilities. Um, and they didn't quite understand it, so they like poke fun at it a little bit. So it's really weird to me, the kind of um, sometimes strange comments that were made. They didn't understand doing poetry, doing something of your creative writing outside of sitting down and typing at a computer to come up with poems or a story, but actually getting out in front of people. It was kind of weird. But then I kind of just found my voice, and I kind of harbored my aesthetic a little bit more come that second semester, and I felt much more comfortable in my skin, and that kind of all like just rolled off my back. And I'm very grateful and fortunate for the MFA experience that I did, because it helped me become the writer and the editor that I am today.
Yeah.
and kind of defined really what my aesthetic was. And I was actually really fortunate. I think what really helped me get through that weird, awkward. I consider that first semester in the MFA program like seventh grade. You know, seventh grade, that transition from like elementary school
Yeah.
to like not quite a teenager, but kind of a teenager, and you're chubby and you've got braces, um, and you know you're wearing the wrong kind of clothes. Like
Yeah.
that's what that first semester of the MFA program was for me. And then what helped, like I said, I had the great opportunity to not only have like 13 of my poems or so featured in a undergrad theater production at the university, but they asked me to perform in it as well too. So every night I had the opportunity to get up there and do what I loved in front of a new audience of 200 people every night, who were coming to see the show, and then having other actors read my work too. And like that was very reaffirming that like, hey, this is what poetry can do.
Yeah.
Um, get out there to new people and to kind of um, cross medium, so to speak, that it can be more than just, you know, words in a book. So
Yeah.
that really helped get me through the program, and the program was really supportive of me doing that too. So I recommend Cal State Long Beach's program immensely, and very happy that they accepted me and that I did my 2 years there, and I wish them nothing but the best.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've talked to a number of people who talk about making their way through academia, and it just seems like so many people from the kind of shared community, uh, even the things we do well are always seen as a deficit. You know what I mean? Like somehow like you guys work so hard, and that's like somehow like a deficit. Like
Yeah,
Eric's out there like speaking to the youth, taking poetry where it's not. That's a deficit. Like
yeah, no, that's a
like
good way to put it. That's a good word choice. I'd say the biggest thing too. I have people ask me this all the time, so it might
oh,
be worth just saying right now. And it might apply to many MFA programs, but I always get asked, people who end up going to Cal State Long Beach, they ask my advice, is kind of don't go into an MFA program thinking it's going to give you all the answers. You kind of really have to pick and choose and do the work yourself. You have to figure out how you're going to make the program work for you.
right,
Uh,
right.
and that was definitely something I learned from it.
Yeah. No, that's definitely strong advice, for anything really. I mean, like,
Yeah.
any accolade you pick up along the way should become a tool, not a trophy, right? It becomes another.
Yeah,
That,
that's a great way to put it. Yeah, I think a lot of times people do view an MFA as a trophy, and it's really not.
right. So okay, so you get through your MFA program. You've got a reputation on the slam scene. You're in the performance poetry scene. You're publishing. Tell us about these chapbooks. They came out, and yeah, let's start with the chapbooks. Then we'll get your full length collections.
Cool. Well, the first chapbook I put out was right before I went into grad school, because I was starting to get features at spaces, and it's important, I think, you know, in the beginning, to have your work available to when you're featuring, so people will be like, hey, I really like that, can I take your work home with you? I mean, there's no greater compliment than having a complete stranger see you and hear you and then want to take a part of you home with them. So my first chapbook, I self-published, the grassroots, do it yourself Kinko's job, um,
Yeah,
called Secret Origin. It had mostly just my slam pieces. So I had that going into grad school, and then finishing grad school, I compiled a collection of poems that were for my thesis. So I kind of had something else out post grad school. And then after that, published through Moontide Press before I took it over. This is back in 2010, my first full length. Um, wasn't really writing much after that. I think it kind of happens a lot after you publish your first full length. You kind of just go dormant for a little while. And then I kind of like pushed myself to want to put out something else. So I had a chapbook published by Orange Ocean Press, which was just a kind of a small indie publicate press long time ago. And then just for fun, I did a couple chapbooks of horror haiku because I do this thing every October where I try and watch a horror movie every day in October and write a haiku based on the movie. And then we paired that. I have an artist who did illustrations. So I'm a big fan of. I love the chapbook. It's one of the reasons why Moontides puts out chapbooks of other poets, as well as full length collections and anthologies. I love what a chapbook can be. I love how it
Yeah.
can be a very narrowed themed collection, and what that can be. Like Moontide's been putting out a chapbook coming up. By Jennifer Brad piece called Lullabies for End Times. So every single poem is a different lullaby for, and it's a very incredible lyrical narrative work. So I love how thematic chapbooks can be. But I also love how chapbooks, especially for poets who are beginning, can be almost like portfolios of their work when they're
Yeah.
going out and they're going to open mics and they're going to readings and stuff. You can trade them with other authors. If you're touring, it gives you something to get your work out there to give people an idea, sampling of who you are. So like when I teach chapbook writing workshops and stuff, I kind of always say there's two different ways a chapbook can go. And I don't think that there's anything wrong self-publishing a chapbook as long as it's done with the utmost care. You're not just publishing yourself, but you've got trusted eyes looking at you, maybe working with an editor, maybe working with a proofreader, designer, because I think it's a team effort when you're putting out anything, and you want to give it the care as if it were being published by a larger press. But I was just talking to someone who was asking me questions about a chapbook the other day. I'm like, if you're going to do it, then I think go the old school, staple bound, find some cool art, make it indie, make it punk.
Yeah. Either make it glossy or make it punk. Don't whatever you do, it's gotta look intentional. Like, that's anything in life. Whatever you do, it's gotta look intentional. Yeah. So actually, I want to talk to you about this maybe a little later, actually, after this interview, perhaps, because before we went to quarantine, me and Quinn Ring over at Beyond Baroque, we were talking about putting on a chapbook festival,
Oh,
and
cool.
and actually but it wasn't just like idea of just leaving it Beyond Baroque. We kind of wanted to take the Pacific Standard Time model and like take it across the venues, across the whatever. And I already talked to Ben about doing it, but I hadn't reached out to any presses yet, so I just wanted to lock the venues first.
Okay.
So chapbook
Well,
festival.
what's funny is I think you're scheduled to speak with Hanalena Fennel at some point.
Yeah,
Well, she's got this really good idea that she wants Moontide to do, and I kind of think it's kind of a cool idea. Is a chapbook contest, which I'm all about chapbook contests. I've been trying to get one going for a while now, but
yeah,
hers was a little different. Was that somebody is sending me their finished do-it-yourself, like kind of indie punk zine, like sending that to me, and that's the basis of it. So it can be one that you've already done before, or one that you just do and you mock it up like
yeah,
that, and that would be kind of the contest, celebrating that kind of do it yourself kind of movement.
yeah.
But I thought it was always kind of cool.
So So I'll tell you. I'll just put it out there right now. I got Branningham to agree to be part of this over at California Imagism, now in Ontario.
Okay.
I'm the literary director of the Daw Center, so the Daw would be involved. Beyond Baroque, obviously Quinn was, kind of the idea. There might be some interest in having 50. I'm still working on that, but Two Idiots are interested. So what the idea would be have like we were gonna have like readings there, let's say like 5 to 10 people with chapbooks. But then out of these readings, a chapbook would be produced wherein the readers were reviewing each other's chapbooks. And the chapbook that they would review was not of their own selection, but rather picked out of a hat. Right?
Oh,
So there'd be like an additional chapbook, which would be the chapbook of the reading, which would be reviews of chapbooks by other chapbook writers that participate in the reading, reviewing each other's work.
it
That was
almost,
the
it almost
process.
feels like a Russian doll. You're like pulling off one shell,
Yeah.
another shell underneath. No, it's cool. I like it.
All right, cool. So when
Well,
we
whatever Moontide can do to help support, I'm always game.
well, shit. Okay. Well, cool. See, this is so for those who don't know, this is the life of independent artists and publishers. We never stop working. Like, it's the middle of an interview, and then a business meeting broke out. um, Excellent. I'm very excited about
You
that.
know what?
Okay,
That's
cool.
actually a really good thing that you say, and I think something that for people who are just starting out, going to readings and stuff like that, that's how it gets done. It's all about the connections that you make with people. It is about that like you said, you're always working. And I would tell people starting out, like going to an open mic, you want to go out there and bring your best foot forward. Bring bring your A game, because you never know who you're going to meet and what connections can be made, what opportunities you can have down the line because of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we were talking earlier about the open mics. Like, so if you want to express the song of your heart, like, cool, do that. But like, if you want to build upon opportunities that connect to more opportunities, you got to bring your A game, and you got to treat it like work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So okay. So we're covering to press. Tell us about a little about the history of Moontide. And yeah.
So Moontide Press started in 2006. It was started by Michael Miller. It was mostly an Orange County based press, publishing Orange County poets. Started by Michael Miller, Lee Mallory, Ricky Mandeville. They were kind of the founding editors. Um, and one of the very first poetry books I ever bought was a Moontide book. It was Mindy Netafee's Sleepyhead Assassins, a great little collection. Uh, Mindy went on; she does amazing stuff. She's written uh, two collections with Right Bloody, Rise of the Trust Fall and Open Your Mouth Like a Bell, and an amazing how-to book called Glitter in the Blood, a book on craft. So the fact that she was one of the first poetry books that I ever bought, and the fact that I inherited her book when I took over the press was a cool thing. And I really enjoyed the work that they were putting out. They were big on doing anthologies. My first publication was one in their anthology, Carving and Bone, and I loved how they gave opportunities to poets that might be overlooked on a larger scale. And they published my first book in 2010. Um, and they've published many great authors. John Brandenham's been published by them, a great collection of prose poetry. Peggy DeBreer is published by them before I took it over. I published her second book under them, but her first book, In the Lake of Your Bones. So I'm in really good company. The anthologies that they put out, Ben's book, Ben Trigg's In the Kindness of a Dark God, is incredible. So I was very fortunate to be published by them. And like I said, they did anthologies, which I thought was really cool. The way they did anthologies wasn't like a large anthology like a lot of people think of when they think anthologies. It was more of like a showcase of different poets. And in about 2015, 2016, Michael was kind of transitioning to other life focuses and goals, and the press kind of sat in limbo for about a year, and we had a conversation, and I told him that I definitely would be interested in taking over the press, because I didn't want all the authors who had books, including myself, to just kind of disappear into the ether. That happens sometimes. The press kind of goes extinct. But I also wanted to keep what Moontide was about kind of alive, to kind of give opportunities to poets that maybe can't get an idea or a collection or even themselves out there. So I wanted to be that kind of opening of a door for them. And I've been very grateful to have been publishing so many collections. I didn't think Michael used to publish like 2 books a year. The first thing we published when I took it over, after kind of rebranding the press, was anthology, because again I thought that was fitting, called Lullaby of Teeth, and we featured 18 different poets, some established, some not. And then the following year published 4 titles, and then the year after that, which was 2019, I think we put out 7 or 8. So pushing out a lot, and we're slated to put out 8 this year. So uh, many more than Michael did at a time. And I'm very fortunate, because of my job, I have the ability to have the time and energy to do so. And I work with a great staff. I've got a great designer and a marketing director, and marketing specialist who help me manage the social media side of things. Dania Akuli and Ellen Weber, they are so helpful. So I'm very fortunate to kind of push the press in a new direction, kind of make sure that we celebrate diversity. We expanded outside of Southern California, so I've been publishing people who reside in Northern California, Washington, the Mid East, Midwest. So yeah, so it's kind of, yeah, took it over in 2017, and don't see stopping anytime soon.
So, you learned a lot on the poetry circuit. You learned a lot in the MFA program. Where did you learn to be a publisher? Where did you learn all the things you needed to know to build to team building and management and distribution and production and all the things that go into all those headaches
um,
we all
I
love so much?
well, one of the things, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I I would say I have, I mean, some experience in terms of, I used to direct an improv troupe, so I know how to manage creative people. Uh, I also, in my job, my like real life job, I work in the management level, so I'm managing teams of people. But ultimately, when it comes to publishing, it's a little different. You're working one on one with the author. I treat every single one of my authors the way that I would want to be treated. I have been published twice through big presses, well, not big presses, but independent presses, where I had to speak with a publisher, had to work with editors. So I treat all my authors exactly the way that I would want. And I try to make every book that I put out to be a collaborative effort. I let my authors have a say in the art that they're going to use, the layout, and really make it a team effort between the two of us. So, and then also, I kind of apply my philosophy of how I teach writing workshops. Um, I move that over to how I work as a publisher. That it's not about me. It's really about helping the poet write the best version of the poem that they're trying to write. It's their voice, it's their aesthetic. So I try never to push my edits, um, to be the kind of work that I would write, because I want to celebrate them. And the same goes in terms of putting their collection together as a book. I try to be very focused on what it is that they're trying to achieve and what are they trying to accomplish. Being mindful of the press as a brand, and not do anything that kind of jeopardizes that or goes against what we're trying to do stylistically. But if I've already selected, to work with you as an author, chances are that's not going to happen based off of, us, starting at point A to, point Z with your collection. So yeah, it's the golden rule, really.
So that really leads to like two questions that really come out of that. One question would be, how do you, as an editor, look at a person's writing and kind of figure out what it is they're trying to accomplish, and then assist them in that? Because that takes a really careful eye to
I
not.
guess I try to really, no, it does. It's difficult. It's really, really difficult. Um, I really just try to find what the heart of the poem is, and sometimes I can't necessarily always get it from just reading, like a person coming at me with one poem. Sometimes when I'm doing workshop, it takes a couple poems for me to start picking up on their voice. I mean, I love, when I do a workshop, I love starting off with a dialogue, with a conversation, and really talking about aesthetic and trying to understand where each poet is coming from, what they're trying to do. But sometimes poets don't know that. I didn't know that when I was starting out. Um, so I think we learn as much about the craft of writing talking about it as we do sitting down and um, discussing technical and mechanics on the page. Um, but I, 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 I'm not trying to like toot my own horn or anything, but I think others would agree. I hope. I don't know, but I do think I have a gift to kind of suss through what a poet, a beginning poet, uh, a seasoned poet. I think I have an ability to suss through and find the heart of a poem, and then if there's an issue of clarity, or we can talk about it and, focus on, hey, I think this is what it is you're trying to say. Here's maybe a way to go about it to make it clearer. Because I do try to tell those that I work with, that goal of the writer is to communicate what they're thinking and feeling clearly, but in a way that allows the reader to infer their own meaning.
Yeah.
Gives them the freedom to walk in the poem themselves. So clarity is big on me. I want to make sure that when I read a poem, I don't get trip up on where it's going. But finding the heart of the poem, even in a poem that might be cluttered with mechanical issues, that's easy enough for me. I can find the heart fairly pretty easily.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing we've mentioned, we touched on a couple times, or you've touched on a couple times, is bringing up kind of like what Moontide stands for. I mean, I don't. There's a number of ways you can say this. It's style, it's aesthetic, it's brand, it's essence. I mean, however you want to put it.
No, yeah.
There's something. What makes it distinct. What is the Moontide signature? What is it? This thing when you describe like, oh, this is perfectly Moontide. What are we looking at?
I would say, and that's a really good question. I think when I started the press, you have to kind of put that mission statement on the website. And honestly, right now, I don't know what that mission statement even is. I can't even think of it. But I've thought about this a lot recently, having been asked questions and such. Um, I I want to say that what Moontide stands for is authenticity. I want the work to feel honest. I want the work um, to I don't know if beg's the right word, but when you get done with a Moontide book, I want you to pick it up again and want to be beckoned to revisit it. Um, Authenticity is key. I want work that can be edgy, can be gut wrenching, can be funny, uh, can be thoughtful. Um, but at the end of the day, I also just wanted to come from a very real and honest place. I want the poets and their work to tell honest stories. I don't, sometimes I think we've all read a poem or a collection where we feel like it's a little too cerebral, that the poet might be dancing around the heart of the matter. That for me is unauthentic, and those are going to be manuscripts that I'm going to pass on. I want it to be poetry that somebody who wouldn't normally read a book of poems would want to read. Could gravitate towards.
Yeah. So how has your personal philosophies that you expressed earlier about kind of in the pre-interview we talked a little bit getting some information, kind of talk about bringing poetry where it's not, and in the actual interview you mentioned taking it into classrooms, taking it into like prisons, taking bringing poetry where it's not poetry on the wall. It's not
Right.
how is that extended to how you push the press and as a publisher and editor?
I think and it's absolutely transferred to the work that I write, to the work that I want the press to publish, and I have to be very mindful that the press isn't just putting out the work that I would write, like we were talking about kind of earlier. I'm very mindful of that diversity, but I think that diversity can exist, but still have those qualifications of authenticity and clarity that multiple audiences can appreciate. And I think that's important because I want my authors to have a larger audience than just a small group of poetry appreciators. I want to help to find ways to get my authors' books into people's hands beyond, like we were saying, the poetry on the wall. So I'm happy with that aesthetic of mine transferring to the press, because I think it's only going to help my authors, because that's where my energy as a writer is at. I want to apply that same energy as a publisher, is think outside the box and can I get my author's work into hands um, on a wider scale.
Yeah. So when I think about this, I'm thinking about when I think about this question, getting our writings on the writer scale. I'm with Flower Song Press. It's an independent press. Not dissimilar to Moontide. There's Tia Chuchas with run by Luis Rodriguez.
Right.
There's the Nomadic Press run by J.K. Fowler up north. There's a series of other presses that are here in LA. I know there's Red Hen. I know I'm forgetting a lot, but like um, I kind of feel like the major publishers, the large publishers, these multi-million, multi-billion dollar corporations, what the advantages they typically have are the fact that they have access to media. In some instances, they kind of are the media, and bookstores, right? Major bookstores, Barnes and Noble, so big business dealing with other big business. But what they don't have is what we have, which are the venues. We have like you're also a host. Um, hosts. Some hosts are publishers, other publishers hosts, and we all kind of know each other. And I
Right.
think we need to create a network of presses and venues. I mean, that seems to me the most logical thing to enhance all our work. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, absolutely. I know that it's been tried before, at least where it comes to venues. I don't know much of how that had panned out. It was a little bit before my time. Um, I I completely agree. I think it is going to require the work, and it's going to want to require the work of the venues and the presses. I think adding presses to it is um, a very necessary and smart addition, and maybe that will help things go better than I've heard it's gone in the past. But it's going to have to take the work. I think every party is going to need to put in the work, but I can only see it benefiting. I think venues and presses do need to support each other more so than they even are doing now, and I think they do now a pretty good job. I mean, I feel very well supported by Red Hen Press, Right Bloody. I'm friends with Derek Brown, and he's been very supportive of what Moontide has done. And like I said, the same with Red Hen. There was a small press festival in Long Beach last year sometime. I can't recall exactly. I think it was like end of September, early October.
Yeah,
That I believe Rob Davis and Sarah Tetro put on, who both have presses themselves. That was a really cool event. So I mean, I definitely feel supported by presses, and I think venues could possibly support each other maybe a little bit more than they're doing now. I feel they definitely do support presses. Um, I think I am seeing something. A friend of mine brought this to my attention, and I think that they're not wrong in this, but I also see a lot more venues popping up, a lot more spaces popping up, which is great. I mean, it's the same thing with presses. People ask me, well, how do you feel about this person starting a press or this person starting a press? I think that's great, because it just means more poetry can get out there. Like you and I
yeah,
were talking beforehand, I can't publish everything that I want to. I have to say no to things, and it's not because I don't like it. It's because I just don't have the resources.
yeah,
So I think it's great. But on the flip side, it's great to see all these new things pop up, but then how do we continue to support the venues that already exist? We're kind of like they're popping up in the same location, sometimes on the same nights.
yeah,
So it's a very tricky dichotomy. It's we want to encourage growth, but how do we also support what already exists instead of is something new popping up just because of community or because of any self-serving motives kind
right,
of thing.
right. I think we saw the case of it in Pomona. I mean, in Pomona, you have. I mean, on the one hand, it appeared as a strength, and in some ways, it is a strength. You have like more poetry per square foot in Pomona than anywhere, probably in the country. I mean,
Really, I mean, is Mike and Dim Lights still going on?
there's Micah Dim Lights. Oh, there's Micah Dim Lights. There's two venues out of Cafe Con Libros. There's another thing out of the DAW. I mean, there's nothing going on right now because we're all the whole
Right.
world online, right? But there was like seven different open mics in a month in 2 square blocks, right? So that's
Yeah.
like my God, right? But it's always been that way. It's always been like 5 to 6 are all in the Pomona Arts Colony. But how much of this stuff was cannibalizing, um, really to be honest, how much of it was cannibalizing My Goddamn Lights? But like how much of it was like eating away from each other?
That's a good thing to think
It's
about.
an open question. I mean, on the one hand, it was really cool that you can go see poetry in Pomona like that often. On the other hand, you know,
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't have an answer, but I think these are good questions that people need to ask themselves before they start something new.
yeah,
Um, and and also what for it's a good question for those of us who are already hosting things and doing things to kind of keep in the back of our heads, because I think it is important that we support one another and get
right.
out there.
So I think another thing was I want we're mentioning the presses and things that's already going on. I think there's a lot of like I think a lot of the relationships with presses and venues are informal and organic. They just kind of happen, and that's cool, and it just seems like the right thing to do, right? But what I think is it just needs to become more of the culture of like what you do. So for instance, if you run an open mic, the part of the culture is to like, oh, okay, that person really is excellent. So I'm going to develop a relationship with that person and make sure they come back to my venue several times, right? That kind of that's part of the general culture of running an open mic, right? It's
Right,
not
absolutely, yes.
right. So the idea that presses and venues should be interlocked is not a part of our culture. It's just part of like, hey, we're all like all independently coming to this good idea to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that needs to be more part of our culture in the same way that like having great features is part of our culture. You know, that's what I'm saying. It needs to become like a more of a cultural norm.
Are you so
Of
kind of like um, hosts of venues and stuff trying to harbor it, just becoming almost kind of um, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, just second nature, I guess we can say, of harboring relationships with presses.
Yeah, like part of the how-to. Like, here's how you run a successful venue. Like, here's how you run a successful independent press. Like just become part of the how-to on both sides of
No, I
like,
mean, I definitely agree with you. I mean, I think having a press, I'm definitely always keeping my eyes open when I go to venues and stuff. Um, and having a venue kind of reach out and want to nourish the press. I mean, I definitely feel that way with the Ugly Mug, probably just because of my long-standing friendships with Ben and some of the regulars. Um, but um, but it'd be great to kind of have that with other venues as well too, and that other venues have that with other publishers also.
yeah, definitely. So we have two questions from the audience, both coming from handling the fennel.
She's an
How
instinct for that one.
how do you reconcile staying true to your voice and still working to grow as a poet?
How do you? Okay, I'm reading the question too.
Okay,
How do I reconcile staying true to my voice and still growing as a poet? Um, I think being understanding of. I don't think aesthetics change as much as the evolution of the tools do, or the way you go about the stories that you want to tell. I think aesthetics can change. I think aesthetics can evolve and grow, but I think the heart of them pretty much your definition of art is pretty much probably going to stay the same throughout your course as an artist or an appreciation of it as an artist. But like I was saying, the tools can grow. And I think it's important to be open and always curious and asking the right questions. And that's how we grow and that's how we evolve. So being able to kind of self reflect as a writer and to kind of push yourself to try new things, not be afraid to make mistakes. And I think that applies to the stories that you're willing to tell too. I remember I'm a big believer in go to those dark, uncomfortable places as a writer because those are the stories that need to be told, the ones that you are afraid to give voice to. If you're just writing the same poem over and over again, um, that's because it's safe and you need to write about something else. And that's how I grow as a poet. I don't think, and I think that is still staying true to my voice because the way that I'm going about the way I'm going to feel about those stories are going to still stay in tune with my aesthetic,
Yeah.
my true voice.
So the second question, Jess, is how do you do that and avoid being insular? But I think that it was to a particular part of the conversation that I cannot recall. So
I think
I,
she's probably referring to maybe venues or
oh, okay.
presses, it being so insular, and it's tough. I mean, I know that there's venues, like, so for instance, I'll use my venue, Shout the Open Mic, as
Yeah, watch out.
because I don't want to talk about any other venues because I don't feel that that's fair. But I have no problem criticizing my own venue and myself.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'll criticize myself all day.
Yeah.
It is tough because you have friends that show up to your venue. You have people that you're familiar with. Regulars become friends, and regulars seem to be very comfortable in that space. Like, I'm thinking of one regular that Shout has that. God, I miss. I think hosts are being hit very hard by this social distancing thing
Hmm.
because when you host a venue, they almost become, they always are like everyone's family, but when you're a host, it's a little different. They feel like they're your family. You kind of take a little bit of ownership of them. And so I have some regulars that have been coming since they were in high school. I think they've graduated. And when they first started coming, they were very timid and unsure, and they've kind of grown to be very, very comfortable in the space. Sometimes so comfortable that they'll make height jokes about me. Um, and that tells you when they're feeling real comfortable.
Yeah.
When they start poking fun at the host, then you're doing something right. And So people who were on the outside have now become on the inside, and there's new people that's on the outside, and that's just the nature of just a space. People start feeling more comfortable. So I think hosts have a responsibility to really step out of the way um, to welcome new people, to give them the attention and the support that they need, so that they uh, feel like they made the right choice to walk in the door that night. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's how. And I don't think it's just the host's responsibility. I think anybody who cares about the community of the open mic, regulars have that responsibility, or should. I mean, it definitely falls. I say that should fall on the host because that's part of what being a host is about. I mean, that just, I think, is one of those unwritten rules that are in our guidebooks. But if we really are a member of the community and we care about the community, we all have a responsibility as a participant in that space to do that as well too. And
Yeah.
understand that a lot of times, be also very understanding and empathetic that it's an open mic space, and where it's going to be a collective of individuals who are all coming from different places of comfort and social, uh, we'll just say social comfortability.
Yeah.
So I think it's also important that we be empathetic and understanding, and we some people might be more reserved than others, while others might be overly comfortable, and that could be just a mechanism of their own to let themselves feel centered in a new space. So sometimes that over comfortable personality might be off-putting to a host or to people in the community. That's why I say we have to practice empathy.
Yeah. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. So we're coming up on the hour.
Okay.
Um, is there advice? Is there anything you want to like offer to people who I'm really we've had a lot of people on to talk about like getting started as a writer and getting your voice out there, but let's say you already are that, and let's say you're like, you know what, like nobody's publishing my work, nobody's publishing my friend's work. Like let's say you're not in LA, you're not in Southern California, you're not somewhere that can reach out to a Moontide or somewhere where Right Bloody's available or any of these presses we've talked about. There's also, I forgot to mention, World Stage, Vagabond. There's a number of great presses here in
Right.
Southern California. But let's say you're somewhere where there aren't any presses and you want to start your own press, and you're seeing this video right now. What advice do you have to that person?
I think that's a great idea. I think they should. If you feel like if you feel like you don't have the opportunities in front of you, you have to make the opportunities. So kind of what I mentioned a little bit earlier about it takes a team. go for it. Self-publishing is actually incredibly easy nowadays with various sources. Ingram, Sparks. I use Lightning Source with Amazon. I wish I didn't have to, but I do because they're big, big controlling monopoly. Um, but there's so many available tools out there, so it is incredibly easy if you just kind of do the work and figure out the how to. But what I would recommend, like I said, make your own opportunities, but you have to treat it with the utmost professionalism and care. You have to put a product that doesn't look like it was self-published.
Right.
Unless you were like you were saying, if you're going to go the self-published route, if you want to go the punk route, commit to the punk route.
Right.
But
Right.
if you're looking to put out something that you couldn't tell that it was self-published, then you need to treat it with the utmost care. Make sure that you have a collection of trusted readers, editors. You know, your work is going through multiple channels and not just first thought, best thought, and you put it out into the world. That you work with a designer, you talk to someone who maybe knows a little bit about marketing, about how to create a marketing strategy to get your work out there. Like I said, it takes a team. So if you're going to make your own opportunities, don't go it alone. Bring in multiple people to kind of put the all their talents together, to pool their talents together to create a great final product that looks like it was published by one of the presses that you've been overlooked by, or that you don't have the reach to get to.
Yeah.
I was joking. So that way you make it look like a Moontide book, but
No, yeah, make it look like Mutai, yeah. There are worse fates in the world. So I really do appreciate you taking this time with us.
no, thanks for inviting me. The hour went by quick. You asked great questions, and it's been a privilege to see you grow as a poet over the years that I've seen you. So we don't run into each other much, but I have the utmost respect for you, and I love that you're doing this series. So when you asked me, I was thrilled and honored. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Where can people follow up? What do you want people to follow up with either you or your press?
So our website's moontidepress.com, pretty straightforward, but you can follow us on social media, both on Instagram and on Facebook. That's a good place to find us. We April's almost over. Today's the last day, but we posted a poem a day from one of our authors throughout the month of April. We've also been doing a mystery bag through the month of April, but we're probably going to keep it going through the length of this social distancing thing. For $30, you get 3 Moontide titles randomly selected, a poetry prompt based out of those titles, and other surprises could find their way into the bag as well too. It's kind of a cool thing right now to get mail.
Yeah.
So you buy it for yourself or you gift it to a friend. You can do that as well. You can shoot Moontide a message and say, "Hey, I just purchased a mystery bag. It's supposed to go to this person." So people have been buying it as gifts for people. That's why I said I think we're going to keep it going for the length of the safer at home order. So you can find that kind of information on Moontide social media. Also, we post a new featured poet every month. So tomorrow, I'm not going to say who it is, but tomorrow there'll be a new featured poet. So we have that feature on our website on moontidepress.com. Like I said, I feature a new poet every month. So follow us on social media. It's run by my great social media team of Danya and Ellen, as I mentioned them before. And then you can find me on Facebook and social and Instagram. And my website, I think Karina posted it, but you can also just post ericmorago.com and it will just redirect you to that. It's a little easier for people to remember. But you can always find me. I do teach workshops and do editing and stuff too. So if people have any editing or workshop questions, they can always hit me up. I'm pretty easy to find.
All right. Well, thanks, Eric, and good luck. And are you migrating Shout online at all, or are you just
I'm
waiting?
not. It kind of all the second Tuesday of the month. So Shout was one of the last readings before this whole thing happened. We were the Thursday night before like the order that the restaurants were closing. So it was weird. So there was a length of time before. So I kind of just didn't get things going. I might try to instigate something. I might try instigating something next month if there's. I don't see it returning. I'm hoping that small businesses are able to do curbside drop off because I want the bookstore to continue to stay in business during this time.
Yeah.
But I don't see us doing a reading in May there. So no, unless otherwise, there is not any virtual readings. But going for Shout. But I know the Ugly Mug, the Two Idiots is doing theirs. I know Definitive Soapbox is doing theirs. So there's tons of other open mics that people should be checking out.
Excellent.
And then come to when everything gets lifted, Shout will return the second Thursday of every month at half off books in Fullerton.
Okay, excellent. I should have asked in the pre-interview, but thank you, Eric, and we will talk soon.
No problem. Thanks, Matt. Take care.